Hi friends, today I will show you a vintage device that has a very interesting history. In the video we will not only restore its work, but do a whole investigation to find out its real age. So make yourself comfortable. This device has traveled to me with difficulty. Once Roman, one of my subscribers, contacted me and offered to send a device. Photos were attached to the letter. From them I realized that this is an old Megameter. Roman is living in Ukraine and delivery to me turned out to be problematic. So he sent the device to Russia with his friend, he sent it to my friend Yuri through local post office, and the letter had already sent the international parcel to my country. After the first inspection, I didn't find any release dates on it. But there is a nameplate with the name of the manufacturer, and this is Siemens, Germany. Today we will try to open the secret of this device to understand what age it is and of course restore and start. Before starting our mini investigation, let's go a little into historical background. Siemens and Halske were founded by the engineer and inventor Werner von Siemens in 1847. The oldest company which, despite the crisis and 2 world wars, exists to this day. True, the original Siemens and Halske company was abolished in 1966. Siemens itself exists today, being a global giant in the development and production of electrical equipment. Who hasn't heard of Siemens? The company was originally specialized in the production of electrical equipment, railway and household devices. It had close ties with the Russian Empire. In many cities of the empire, Siemens had official representatives and offices. A huge number of ambitious projects in Southeast Russia were implemented by Siemens, including the first tram track. Later, in the 1917s, Siemens even opened a factory in Nizhny Novgorod. During the existence of the Third Reich, the head of the company, Friedrich von Siemens, didn't sympathize with the National Socialists. But naturally, Siemens, like many other companies during the Second World War, produced military equipment for the Reich. It becomes clear from the Wikipedia that the slave labor of prisoners of concentration camps was used at Siemens factories. After the war, the company lost 98% of its assets. A huge part of the equipment was exported to the USSR. In 1966, the Siemens and Halske company were liquidated, like many companies belonging to the Siemens house, and then there was a merger with the Siemens Corporation. This is exactly the Siemens that still exists today. Let's go back to our Megameter. It was produced by Siemens and Halske and therefore it was made before 1966. How could it come into the USSR? There are actually a lot of options and it all depends on the release date of this device. The appearance is deceiving. It can be made at the beginning of the last century. I found a couple of similar-looking devices which, judging by the words of the sellers, were made at the beginning of the 20th century. If this is the case, then, given Siemens' close ties with Tsarist Russia and the presence of the factory, it is quite possible that it was made in Russia. But all the devices made at the Siemens factories in the Tsarist Russia, all that I met, were signed in Russian. The second option. We know from history that after the Second World War, Siemens property was exported and this device could well have been among the exported goods. Also, a war trophy isn't excluded. It could well have been taken by a Red Army soldier keen on electrical engineering and understanding the essence of this device. Roman's words also speak in favor of this theory. The device was gathering dust in the warehouses of an abandoned factory, and it probably got there after the war. After the war, Siemens and Halske company remained on the territory of the German Democratic Republic, that is to say, on the Soviet part of Germany, and it's logical to assume that such devices could have been produced after the war. Maybe. But the technologies and components of the late 40s and early 50s were already completely different. Wood was rarely used then, resistors already looked different. In general, this is less possible. A short commercial break. Tired of homemade PCB technology or your PCBs aren't as pretty as you'd like? GLC will manufacture boards of any complexity and size for you. The complexity isn't important. The minimum cost for each batch of 10 to 10 centimeter boards starting from $2. Moreover, the price doesn't change depending on the selected color, fast delivery and convenient payment methods, and the quality is at the highest level. The link to the GLC website can be found in the description under the video. Let's continue our investigation. The device is in a wooden case. There are no dates on it, neither on the case nor on the pointer instrument. The only numbers on the back are the number 37. Next to it is a piece of paper with a Russian inscription, probably TZ6R. Another number on the head is 99/12/65. I'd like to take it for a date, but the number 99 confuses. It happens that many manufacturers sign weeks, but the 1990th week aren't possible. There are much fewer weeks in a year. In general, it can be either the serial number of the device itself or of the pointer instrument, but this date is still not excluded. Maybe it means something. I also suspected that it might be a patent number and looked on German sites. Alas, no information. A sticker on the reverse side with the inscription TZ6R made by hand. The fact that it was made in the late period is 100% because the inscription is made with a ballpoint pen, not with a pen and ink. There are clear edges inherent in a ballpoint pen, which only became widespread in the mid-60s. That is, it was made after the device came to the USSR. What can this inscription mean? Maybe the price 6 rubles or some kind of code? Let's not pay attention to this inscription yet. A close inspection showed that there is a red mark under the inscription. I ripped off this piece of paper, but I couldn't see anything. Maybe it's just the glue. Later, similar devices were found on the net dated to the 1945. The next inscription, the number 37, may well show the year of release, but this isn't certain. Next to it is another inscription similar to the Armenian letter A. This is the logo of Izmaritl factory in town Abovian, the Armenian SSSR, but again, this is just speculation. The device is clearly not produced there. On the scale of the device, as I said, there is no date, only some kind of serial. There are no clues, so we will disassemble the device. By the way, this device lacks one more nameplate with the name of the device. Traces of attachment are clearly visible, but alas, there is no plate itself. Inside we find only resistors, wires, and the switch. A couple of MR24 inscriptions and some kind of signature with the number 5. Perhaps this is quality control. The MR24 inscription may mean March 24th, but also I met the MR marketing on later samples of Siemens devices. By the way, the same inscription can be seen on the back cover. The resistor of the VZR series is immediately striking. This is a Soviet resistor and it turned out to be here later. This device was repaired by someone. There are a few more resistors with old designations, apparently made in Austria. Some even have the name of the manufacturer. I carefully examined all the components for a release date, but alas, I couldn't find anything. Pay attention to the fact that the mains wire was replaced, but inside you can see piece of original wire. Its isolation isn't modern. This is impregnated fabric. Of course, here we see hinged assembly of radio components. I'd like to note the high assembly quality. Look at the terminals, brass inserts, these perfectly matched textilite insulators, wire routing grooves. Literally, this is an eternal device, according to the most modest estimates. The device is 60 years old, and possibly 100 years old. Who knows? In front we have a wire-wound variable resistor. Inside we can see some oxidation. There is also a mega-ohm, kilo-ohm switch. There is a wheel at the back that blocks the movement of the pointer, a convenient option so that it doesn't dangle during transportation. Thanks to Yuri, he enabled this option before sending it by post office. So we have no obvious leads till now. Of course, I was looking for similar devices on all sorts of sites. It turned out that Siemens was made not only megameters but also voltmeters, ammeters, volt ammeters, millivoltmeters, and so on in a similar design. At the same time, one can be dated to the beginning of the 20th century, the other to the 50s of the same century, and in appearance they will practically no differ. It was important for me to understand in what period such devices were produced and, if possible, find out date of my particular sample. After a couple of days' unsuccessful web searches, in desperation I wrote to Siemens, understood that I'm addressing a stupid question and they will not raise archives because of a strange question from an ordinary blogger, but still there was a little hope. On the third day, I started digging German forums and came across archival documents from Siemens. I looked through all the Siemens archives from 1900s to 1965. It became clear that a company in the last couple of decades was engaged in the production of all sorts of watches and mechanisms for them, but I didn't find anything about my device. Then I found a separate large Siemens & Halke catalog dated back to 1906. This catalog describes almost all of their products, starting with the most ancient devices. I started flipping through this book, and yes, finally an archival document was found which can be referred to. Similar devices have been described in earlier documents from the late 19th century, so it became clear when the production of such devices was approximately started. Is it possible in our hands a device of 125 years old? So that you understand the historical value, I will say that the person who assembled this device could personally know George Simon Ohm and be friends with him, given that both were Germans. And with Michael Faraday, he could, for example, meet and have a cup of tea, who knows? Maybe when this device was being made, Hitler had just started going to school. But let's leave emotions. We need more accurate information, because one thing is the start date of production, but another, find out a specific date. The radio components will help us to find the answer. Let's use the deduction method. Early examples of such devices, dating from the late 19th century, look slightly different. They have a metal wood body, a large Siemens Halske Berlin inscription. There were also devices made entirely of wood. This is confirmed by the Siemens catalog. Look at the illustrations. In our case, the device has bakelite parts. Bakelite was invented by Leo Baekeland in 1909, and the production of bakelite was mastered in 1910. Therefore, the device isn't older than 1910. There are resistors inside. One of them is 2 megaohm from Siemens. They had a logo just in the spirit of that era, if you know what I mean. The rest of the resistors are Seder, made in Austria. On the net I found similar ones, and according to the sellers, they date back to the 1930s and 40s. If you believe this data, then the device was produced in the Third Reich. I pointed out earlier that there is no date on the resistors, but you may have noticed some inscriptions in the video, for example 4 and 28, which may well mean the 4th month of the 28th year. On another resistor of the same type, there are inscriptions 5 and 10, that is, by analogy, the 5th month of the 10th year. However, the company producing them didn't exist at that time, so there aren't dates, maybe the batch number or the number of the resistor itself. Those times everything was done by hand and batches were small scale. I really want to restore and turn on this device, but I also want to know the release date. So I soldered out and unscrewed the variable wire resistor in the hope that I would find some info in its front. And my efforts finally yielded result. On the front side of the resistor, we see the OP-Eng DRP-Eng inscription. At first, such a request to Google didn't give anything. Then I started looking for the meaning of these letters piece by piece and came across a forum. A person has a set of keys with the same abbreviation, and experts told him that the abbreviation DRP means Patent of the German Reich, and in German it sounds like this.
Deutsches Reichspatent.
To be honest, from the very beginning, I assumed that it was a device from the period of the Third Reich, but from official sources, it was possible to find out that the abbreviation DRP has existed since 1877, and the word Reich can mean not only the Third Reich, but also the Second. Yes, of course, this also existed. Often the German Empire is called just Reich. The word Reich shouldn't be associated with Nazism. In German, this word is used to indicate a number of land subordinate to one authority or governor. And the abbreviation OP means Organized Patent. Almost all the devices and tools that I found on the web which had the inscription DRP belonged to the period of Hitler Germany. Later, I dug up information about other components of this device. Some have the inscription Sater Austria. These resistors are associated with Clank Film company, which means sound movie, if translated from German. The company was founded by Siemens and Telefunken. It is the same AEG. Clank Film is well known to audiophiles. The company was founded in the late 20s. It produced equipment for film and sounds recording, and not only equipment but also various components and spare parts. This once again confirms that our device is from the 30s. Based on all this, we can say that the device was made during the period of the Third Reich. I think almost likely it was made in the period from the 33rd to 38th year. On the variable resistor there is a stem with the inscription 33, possibly showing the year of manufacture. Probably the box itself and so on was made earlier, but the device was assembled in the specific period on components of the same period. Now, knowing the history, we will try to set it into working condition. I already checked the pointer indicator and it's fully functional. Because oxides are observed on the variable resistor, it would be good to clean it. We are preparing an ultrasonic bath and throw our resistor there. Let it bathe for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, it looks like new. It's cool. It really is high quality. I will say more. I haven't yet seen a better quality variable resistor. I solder it into place. I'm not sure if these replaced resistors are really the correct value. Hope these is so and just solder what has fallen off. Next, I glued on the chipped sections of the case, and at the end I changed the mains wire, or rather what was left of it, with a new one, although the new wire from another era. Now let's think how to turn on. The inscription of 220 volts seems to suggest that it must be powered from the mains. In fact, this is wrong. Here we need a constant current, otherwise the indicator will not work as properly or will not work at all. But in mains, as we remember, we have an alternating current. I think these devices were powered by portable generators of low power, by analogy with modern megameters, inside which a similar generator is already built in. Because the current consumption by the device is extremely small, almost any low current source which can give 220 VCD is suitable. I will use a cheap Chinese converter with voltage stabilization. It can give up to 380 to 400 volts. I set 220 volt in advance. The first launch was made through a safety lamp for 10 to 15 watts. I attached a precise resistor of 1 megaohm to the terminals of the device and switched the measurement range to megaohm. I turned it on and a miracle happened. The arrow moved and even shows our 1 megaohm. The device of the Third Reich came to life. It was scary a bit. I directly felt the spirit of that era. A megaohm meter, of course, can measure all sorts of different resistors, but its main purpose is to measure the isolation resistance by applying a high voltage to the measured surfaces. And the higher this voltage, then the greater resistance could be measured. In our case, this is about 50 megaohm. Such a device is convenient to look for breakdowns and damage areas, as well as to rate the quality of isolation. Of course, modern digital megameters are easier to use, safer, more compact, and much more accurate. But you must admit that for a device made 90 years ago, it's very good. Well, friends, whether this video was interesting and informative is up to you to judge. Of course, I'm far from an expert in assessing and dating things, and I could have missed something somewhere, but I tried to do my best. This device is really antique and seems to be quite rare. It was made in different times for the entire planet in the state, which was one of the main reasons for these difficulties. But despite this, then the Germans were ahead of the world and dictated the fashion for everything. They had the best weapons, the best technology, and the best minds. When this video was already completely ready and edited, I received a response from Siemens about a week after the request. In the letter, there was only one, but a very useful reference to the Historical Institute of Siemens, which for some reason I overlooked. In 1907, the son of the founder of the company created a large archive which has been supplemented and expanded at all times. Therefore, I found the contacts of an expert. If she doesn't give an exact answer, then no one will do it. After my appeal, an answer was received that the archive was closed due to quarantine. But they promised to respond soon, so maybe we will continue the story if new interesting information emerged. Undoubtedly, this device will take a special place of honor in my collection of old devices. I have a question to all of you. Are you interested in exactly this type of videos to study of old devices, their history and restoration? Please don't forget to leave a feedback in the comments, and there will definitely be a continuation, especially considering that I have a couple of old devices. Don't forget to look at the description because there will be more details, and subscribe to my Instagram where I post all sorts of interesting photos. No, that's all for today. I say goodbye. Until we meet again. With you was Kaisian TV.